Hello and welcome to an other amazing uh, episode of ISA podcast. So today our guest is very special. As on the board we have nine members, and just we have two female directors, and today we have invited one of them, and we are very excited to have her here with us. So please welcome Dina Lilian. Welcome, Dina. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Yes, I'm very good. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, so like we managed to get the time, at last.
Finally, hey, with all the times around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's great that it's actually happening.
Yeah. So like, how you felt like in the board, like there are nine people, seven male, two females, and also in the real life the ratio is 5 to 1, five male, one female. So how was the life being a female who stutter?
Well, I'm a female who stutters. I'm also a speech therapist who now specializes in stuttering. And I always say to my clients, if they're female or male, I say, well, I'm the lucky one because I'm the female who stutters, right? So if I'm talking to the male, it's usually I'm usually the exception to the rule. I also run some self-help groups. So I re-established a Speakeasy stuttering group for people at Speakeasy, which is a self-help group for people who stutter. And it's amazing because and I'm sure this happens to all the workshops in terms of for people who stutter. So I'll set up a conference or a workshop, and out of 20 people, there'll be 4 females. And it's not because it's planned, it's just because, hey, let's just look, it's the ratio, 1 in every 4 or 5. So, stuttering for any individual, being male or female, it's obviously, it's quite different for a person who stutters, but even more so for a female, because we are rarer than the males. But I think our journey, females, are very similar to those of men, in terms of, well, what we feel, the emotions, the iceberg theory of stuttering, the covert and all of that. So it's pretty much similar to a man in terms, I've never been a man, I can't talk about that, but in terms of the experience that we've been through. But obviously we are fewer than men in terms of people who are stuttering.
Yes, well, I can relate to that. Like being a person, if you want, if you are trying to say something and you can't say. So I think this is the same feeling for a male and for a female. But when we talk about in terms of mental health, how you see that? Like you have been stuttering still sometimes, but I haven't seen you, stutter so far. So like you are you were a stammerer, and now you are treating people with this issue. So how you see that, like the mental health issues, they're being a stutter, these are more in males, or that are more in females?
Are you talking about the mental health issues? Are you saying it's among
Yes.
male and females?
Yes. Yeah.
I do
uh,
think that it's on par. I do think females. We can talk about, maybe females are sometimes more sensitive, more feelers than men, obviously. But I'm sure some of the listeners here are familiar with the iceberg theory of stuttering, where when you hear a person who stutters, what you hear is the overt stutter. That's the repetitions, the blocks, the primary stuttering, and some of the secondary behaviors. hand movements, leg movements, whatever that. But there's the bulk of the iceberg underneath, which is the covert, which can be usually is the anxiety, the embarrassment, the emotions, and the negative thoughts. So I think pretty much, a male and female would feel and think pretty much the same thing. I think a female, because, and obviously gender roles and talking about feelings, all of that are in the process of changing in the world. But genuinely speaking, females are pretty much, I think, more open about their feelings and their thoughts, and are allowed to cry, more so. So I think, females would perhaps, especially in the past, definitely would talk about their feelings more so than men. And I know, being a speech therapist who treats people who stutter, and a man versus a female, men, by definition, sometimes are supposed to be the strong ones and the breadwinners and all of that. So sometimes that being a person who stutters and perhaps not getting your name out or presentations and all of that, that definitely hinders a person's, or can affect, let's put it that way, a person's confidence, a person's sense of self-worth. But I don't necessarily think, and I'm sure there's been research on this, which I don't actually know offhand, but in terms of male versus female and the thoughts and the covert, the feelings versus male and female. But from my experience talking with people who stutter, as a person who stutters myself, and being a speech therapist, dealing with men and female who stutter, pretty much, this is also amazing because I'm talking to you, right, in Pakistan. I'm in South Africa. I talk to Rod, in USA. I talk to a person who stutters in Australia. We are all strangers, right? But when we talk about stuttering, we all experience very similar things. Every person who stutters avoids, right? And I didn't avoid because I spoke to you. Not most people who stutter. Or substitute. It's so weird. It's kind of intrinsic in a person who stutters. So all people who stutter are so different, but yet so similar. So when a person who stutters comes to me and they feel all alone, yes, you are alone, but you totally aren't alone, because there's such a community out there. So yes, of course, male and females are different, and we can go into that at a different time. But I think a male and female's experience of stuttering and a female's experience myself are pretty much on par. I think females perhaps might talk about it more and express their feelings more. And obviously everyone is unique and individual, and it differs to a certain extent.
Yeah, like I have been working with the individuals who stutter here in uh, Pakistan, and I have experienced that, like, in females, the psychological issues, they're more intense. For example, the anxiety is high. They can't make proper eye uh, 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 contact, and so forth. But yeah, you are right. But it depends on from uh, person to person. The females I have talked outside Pakistan, like you, and many more. I have felt that they are more confident than stuttering men.
Do you know what? Actually, I think culture has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
So I don't know anything about the Pakistani culture, so I can't talk about that. But I think culture has a lot to do with it. The role of the man, the role of the woman, generally, and then stuttering on top of that. So does that make sense? Does that kind of put a different perspective or twist in terms of what you're saying?
Yeah, culture does make a difference, a lot. Like, what is the uh, uh,
The role.
role and the positioning of man and uh, a woman in the uh, society. Yeah, and this also changes with your background and your education. But yeah, it's generally that. But I think that like for stutterers, as their severity, like you know varies from person to person. In the same way, the psychological issues, they also vary from person to person.
Yeah,
So
I agree. Totally. I think that it does vary to person to person. The extent of it varies from person to person. But I think the underlying emotions are pretty similar: anxiety, embarrassment, mind reading. What are they thinking? I think that ultimately is similar, but the severity of it and the extent of it, and obviously it would depend on a person's own unique characteristics as well.
yeah, so yeah, and if we see that um, as being a individual who stutter,
Mm-hmm.
and being SLP, what common you can say trends or habits you have seen in stutterers, like that's that stops them to uh, overcome uh, uh, this speech fluency.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Like you are treating people with
Yeah.
speech issues, so
Mm-hmm.
you have seen people who are doing so well, like you are giving them therapy, and they are changing their behaviors, their speech patterns, and they are coming into fluency. But there are a set of people you have tried a lot, but they are not improving. So what are the traits of those people who are not improving, and and for those who are improving, there must be some traits, or you can say uh, 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 trends for these two uh, categories.
Okay, so I think a successful therapeutic process, it's really important that there are three main factors. And I know this personally as well. As a person who stutters, I went to about five, I went to, not four, about, I went to five speech therapists who didn't help my stutter until I went to my final speech therapist at the age of 16, who was able to give me the management tools. And so, what did she give me that the others didn't give me? And I say she because they were all female, and most speech therapists in South Africa are female. And when I look back in retrospect, what she gave me is she dealt with me as a person, not only with my stutter. So it wasn't just about this behavior. It was about dealing with Dina, dealing with her feelings, dealing with her thoughts around the stuttering. And initially, when I walked in there, and she was very different from my previous speech therapist. She was short, she had curly hair. My other three therapists were tall and blonde, so everything was different about her. And she said to me, Dina, I want to work with you as a person. I'm not going to only work with a stutter. And I walked out there in tears, actually, because I didn't want to hear that. I wanted a pull. I wanted Dina, do this, and you'll stop stuttering. And I learned from that, and I learned from her, from as a person who stutters, and then obviously in the latter years from a speech therapist point of view. And now it's really big, and it goes back to your mental health issues that you asked me before. That when, and this is what I do when I treat people who stutter, it's really important to deal with a person who stutters eclectically. What does that mean? To deal with the actual behavior, right? So a person who stutters, the words don't come out. Why don't they come out? Okay, research is quote unquote complex interplay of a number of different factors, right? But we're not going to go into that. We don't know the etiology, we don't know the cause of stuttering. What we know is what happens at the moment that a person stutters, right? So you and Ahmed and myself, okay, at certain times you can't get the word out. Why? Who knows? It just doesn't come out, right? So as a speech therapist, and I see my role as a speech therapist is to give a person who stutters tools and techniques in order to help get that word out, right? At the same time, it's really important to deal with some of the emotions and some of the thoughts that goes behind that, some of the anxiety, some of the embarrassment, some of the negative feelings. Oh, what's he thinking, what's she thinking about it? Because I believe if you don't deal with that, it's really hard to implement the techniques, right? And my therapist at the age of 16, she worked with me, she worked with my feelings, she worked out with my thoughts. And I walked out the room at the time and I told my dad, I said, I'm not going back there. And he said to me, okay, but you've been to 4 speech therapists, where are you going to go? Give her a chance. And so I did. And as a result of that journey, I'm here, or many years later. So I think successful therapeutic process, I've seen it with myself and I've seen it working with individual. Really important to have, number one, a speech therapist who knows what she or he is doing, okay, who specializes or has a special interest in stuttering. Number two, a client, a person who stutters, who wants therapy, who wants to be there, who's at the right stage in their life. Now, I've had lots of clients who've come to me, or parents, and they've said to me, Dina, I wish I met you 5 years ago or 2 years ago. And I say it's all about timing, okay? Because maybe at that stage, your child or you weren't ready for speech therapy. You need to be open for it. And therapy is not easy. I'm talking from experience for myself as a person who stutters and seeing lots of people go through it, go through the therapeutic process, because it's facing your stutter, it's facing your fear, your demon, you're someone, I don't have, some people who stutter hate their stutter, right? So imagine walking around with something you hate inside of you. It's really difficult. So it's working to and I was listening to Doug's podcast, and he talks about acceptance. And where it comes into, I'm not asking you to love the stuttering, but just accept it, that's part of you, instead of that hatefulness, So it's the client has to be ready to enter the therapeutic process, because it's important to open up and talk about. And thirdly, which is really important as well, is the rapport between the client and the therapist. And obviously it takes time because you are strangers, and the client has to learn to trust the therapist, and the therapist has to learn to read the client. But I believe that if there's a therapist who knows what he or she is doing, if there's a client who wants to be there and there's the right stage in that stage, right, and mentally open to it, and if there's that good therapeutic rapport, I think therapy will always be successful. To what extent and how you define success, that's another conversation. Do you define it as 100% fluency? Which you don't, because no one is 100% fluent. But are you defining success of therapy in terms of fluency, in terms of thoughts, in terms of feelings? Is a different story. But okay, and we can deal with that in another podcast another time. But the whole thing about, does the individual feel that he or she has gained out of therapy? I think that with those 3 ingredients, there will be some success or some gain in terms of therapy. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, you are right. Like, this all, uh, depends on what we think and what we uh, perceive. And till the time we keep hating ourselves, like, when I'm going to speak and I feel a block, I feel, shame, I feel
Exactly.
embarrassment, I start to feel anxiety. So how I will be able to apply the techniques I have learned? So for
You
that,
need
I have to, as a person, I have to accept myself. Who am I? and from there this journey will begin. When we are happy from inside, then that all will uh, reflect outside. And the point number two you have highlighted, that like when we are going for therapy, if we think that, hey, being I am a stutterer, but I have read and watched so much on the internet. Now I am also a therapist. So if we go with that thought, I don't think we will ever improve. We have to accept and submit to the therapist that I am a clean blank slate. I know nothing, and I will do what you will say. So I think this is the a starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think it's obviously everyone in life has baggage. Everyone in life has experience. Everyone, I mean, especially, in 20s and adult for sure. So you coming with your experience, positive and negative, and with stuttering it's usually negative. And speech therapy, I've had lots of people who've come to me who've had, unfortunately, some negative experience with speech therapists. And they've come to me for one last chance. And I say to them, the success of therapy with me is not about fluency. Yes, obviously that's part of it, but it's not all about fluency. And a lot of research has gone to show now in terms of stuttering therapy, an eclectic approach, okay, which goes back to what you've been talking about, mental health. So you're dealing with the stuttering, but you're also dealing with some of the thoughts and emotions. Obviously, we as speech therapists are not psychologists. Okay. So if there are any issues that we can't deal with, it's important that we refer on to psychologists, which I do. But if it's directly linked to stuttering, and you deal with the behavior or with the emotions, then it goes from a negative cycle to a positive cycle. There's something called Cooper's ABC, which I use a lot in therapy, and I remember my speech therapist told me. So if you imagine a triangle, it's A, B, C. Affect, have you heard this, Ahmad?
No, I
It's
think
clever.
I didn't.
It's a psychological paradigm. It's called Cooper's ABC. Imagine a
Okay.
triangle. You have affect, behavior, cognition. This applies to anything. I'm going to apply it obviously to stuttering. A behavior that a person who stutters presents with is obviously stuttering. So imagine if you stutter, the cognitions, your thought would be, oh, I'm stuttering. He thinks that I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm incompetent, right? So the stuttering would cause a negative thought process, which in turn would cause a negative emotion, right? So I'm going to feel anxious. The anxiety would then cause more stuttering. The stuttering would then cause increased negative thoughts, which would cause increased negative emotions, right? The whole point
Right.
in therapy for me is to come in therapy at all 3 points. Okay. The behavior, which we give techniques to. Okay. And there are different techniques, all based primarily on the same, on similar rationale. Like Doug talked about, I forgot what he's talking about. Australia uses prolonged speech. I use ERA, easy, relaxed approach, smooth talking. There's all different kinds of different kind of ways that you can implement. Easy answer, slide context, all things that speech therapists implement. That's to target the behavior. At the same time, so you increase the fluency, right? But at the same time, you look at the mind talk. So a lot of therapists do a bit of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So looking at what's going on with that mind. Okay, so we're changing that mind talk from a negative to a positive or neutral, and then what happens to the emotion? So that negative cycle is turned to a positive cycle. I again just want to reiterate that we speech therapists are not psychologists. So if there's things that come up, I personally will refer on. But if it's directly linked to stuttering, once we change that negative cycle, it changes to a positive cycle. Does that make sense? Even though sometimes if you, and I say, it's like we're climbing Mount Everest. We want to get to the top. We're going through base camps. Sometimes we go to base camp 2 and we go back a base camp. And we go to base camp 3 and we go back one. But as long as we're going forward, does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, it does. Like with speech therapy, like the new research is saying to mix like CBT or ACT. So is
Yes,
that like making a a combination or a cocktail and see uh, what works uh, for an individual. So being a human being, the thoughts here that
absolutely.
matters a lot. If we are feeling confident, we are feeling happy in
Absolutely.
here, so we can deal all the things outside with with a smile. But if we are feeling down, we are scared from inside, we are feeling low self-esteem, so that will be really uh, uh, difficult even to
Absolutely.
stand alone in a park.
Yeah, for sure it is, and it's a domino effect, and it can be, and usually a person who stutters before they've dealt with anything, or learned any techniques, or talked about their stuttering, is usually very negative. It's usually stuttering, feeling bad, thinking bad, negative, and the whole thing about therapy and self-help groups as well. It's about changing that to positive. It's about feeling that you can speak somewhat fluently if you want, if you have the techniques, or if you stutter, it's okay. Okay, because there's more to you than just your stuttering. Okay, I'm Dina. I'm a person who stutters, but I'm a speech therapist. I can be a wife. I can be a mother. I can be a daughter. I can be all of this as well. I'm not just a stutterer. And Doug also talks about this.
Yeah, talking about the feelings. So how was your childhood? Like, did you have bad experiences too, or like it was fine? You
No, definitely. I remember stuttering since I was little. Actually, my mom said that I actually started stuttering in speech therapy, but I started talking late apparently, and I went to speech therapy because not initially because of my stuttering, but because I wasn't talking. And then I started stuttering. There's no stuttering in my family, which is interesting because we know 65% of people who stutter, there is stuttering in the family. So there isn't, it's not genetic, well, as far as I know, in my family. And I remember stuttering all my life. All my life. I mean, my school career, I remember saying an Afrikaans speech. Obviously, here in South Africa. I was in Standard 4, which is grade 6, 12 years old. I remember standing in front of my class, which was about 20. I was in an all girls school, so 20 girls. And I remember the line now. I mean, I'm 44 now, right? So I was 12 then, so it's quite a long time ago, and I still remember the words. And it was Anne Frank's Tin Toe and Stealing Hate, which means in English Anne Frank's exhibition. And I got stuck after 10. So Tin Toe and Stealing, okay, is a word in Afrikaans that means exhibition. And obviously Tin Toe and Stealing is 2 syllables. I couldn't get past the 10. And I remember standing in front of the classroom and going, Anne Frank said 10, and I just ran out. Um, and I was in tears, obviously. And I mean, I wasn't teased at school. But obviously I felt it, and I was ashamed. I was anxious. I remember I used to play the guitar as a child. I remember singing a song. I thought I had it this time. I thought the dream would be mine. Hoping to fly, I fall. Right? That goes to show about all those orals. And I'm sure you know as well that I would practice and practice and be fluent and fluent. And then you stand in front of the class, and then what? It doesn't come out, right?
yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sure lots of people, if you're listening to this, you can identify and relate to it. So yeah, I mean, answering a call. Remember those days before cell phones when you had to actually ask for someone? You know, you say, hello, please, can I speak to whoever you wanted? I couldn't do that. I used to ask my sister to ask for me. So yeah, I used to avoid. I used to substitute a lot, and so it did affect me. It did affect my childhood. I was told that I was. My parents always told me that my teacher said I was quite mature, and I think as a person who stutters, you have to grow up. Not you have to, but I think the experience of perhaps feeling not outcasted, but different and looking and out looking in, I think automatically gives one a feeling of being different and more insight and maturity that one doesn't. I think it makes you grow up sooner than your time. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, like that's true. Like we become, more sensitive. We are also able to feel the pain of
more empathetic.
others. Yeah, I think we become more receptive. We give more response from the inside. We feel that, and like when you took the therapy at 16 and you start to speak fluently, so that change, how that felt. Did you felt
It
that?
wasn't automatic. It wasn't automatic, and it doesn't happen overnight. And it was over time, and then I relapsed. Okay, a lot of people know about
Yeah,
relapse. Okay, where I learned a technique and was able to manage it for the first time, which felt awesome, right? And then I finished school, and obviously, what was I going to do after school? I wasn't quite sure. I mean, at the age of 16, I wanted to become a secretary to answer my dad's phone because I couldn't do that because I couldn't answer his phone because of my stutter. So that's what I wanted to do. And then I finished school and I took a year or two off. And obviously, you don't not sure exactly what you want to do, and it was unsettling. And so, what happened to my speech? Obviously, started stuttering a bit because we know that stuttering is not caused by anxiety, but it's exacerbated by anxiety and stressful situations. And then I went back to therapy. So I always say to my clients, and I believe this myself, that I never just charge anyone from therapy. I never keep anyone in therapy forever, but I have them and I say, okay, now go. And if you need me, I'm here. Because as far as I know, there's no cause and there's no cure. And once a person who stutters, probability, there'll always be some stuttering there. And sometimes life doesn't go smoothly all the time and throws at you things. And sometimes one needs a booster. And then I've had clients who will phone me and say, hey, Dina, can I have a couple of sessions? 5 years later, 10 years later, or never. And that's fine. So I don't think I don't think speech therapy is ever a quick fix. And even these intensive courses, I've never been on one, but I've observed some, and I know in America they have a lot. And I know there's a lot of carryover and a lot of, and they have self-help groups every couple of weeks and months. And that's really important and England has done a lot of research into narrative therapy and in terms of your view of yourself. Okay, that's a whole other, we can talk about that with podcasts. But I was never 100% fluent. I'm still not 100% fluent. There's still times that I stutter. Okay, believe it or not. And I very much monitor myself all the time. I may not show it or aware of it, but I'm still there.
yeah, like this is a thing. The bad experiences we had in the childhood, or even, sorry, even later on, they are still in the sub conscious. These days I'm having the relapse, but I'm here and doing the podcast, so I'm
Yeah.
fighting with those you know uh, negative thoughts. I think this is the main thing. Being a stutter, we have to fight with those negative thoughts, even we are stuttering, if we are uh, uh, handling ourselves and taking out the negative thoughts, so
Yeah.
like that helps a lot. We feel good. We are in a good mood. We you know we
Mhm.
become more uh, confident and relaxed, and less and less anxious.
But I think that, Ahmed, you said something really important there. It's about fighting with the negative thoughts. It's about reframing it. It's about reframing what happened. So if I look back at when I was in standard four, or look back at the phone calls, I don't look at it as negative now. Okay. At the time, I was distraught, and I get it. And I'm with me as a 12-year-old and with me as a 16-year-old who couldn't make a call. But now looking back at those experiences, it's molded who I am today. Right. So I reframe that. I'm not ecstatic I went through it. I'm not jumping and joy in the street, but it's kind of, it's molded who I am today. And I remember reaching, I went to one of these conferences, I think it was in Croatia, and someone wrote a letter to his stutter. And this is really, it's really powerful to do. And I use it in therapy as one of the tools. And he talks about his journey about stuttering and how he goes through it. And at the end, he says stuttering is a gift. Okay. Now, if you would have told me at the age of 12 or 16, or if I would tell a client first or second time that stuttering is a gift, which I would never do, okay, they would look at you like, excuse me, woman, what are you talking about? So it's about, and any struggle or challenge that one goes through in life. And it's really difficult and it's really hard. But if you have a person who can help guide you in terms of your mentoring, your mental health, yeah, okay, in terms of seeing what you're going through, giving you the tools. And when I say tools, your tools to manage your behavior in terms of stuttering, and your tools to manage your thoughts, okay, then one is able to look at a situation, even though it's so difficult, and it can be stuttering, it can be anything in life, in a different manner, in a different light. Does that make sense?
Yeah. you know, like um m- like uh we can't say that to a child, like the child is suffering. I, I think these thoughts we have, like this is a gift. This come like when we have crossed 30s, and we are much mature, and we have we have control on the stuttering. We are more relaxed and confident. And now when we look back and see how stuttering has changed
Molded.
our life and where we are now. So at that time we think that this
Not.
is a gift. Like
Not
uh, I think stuttering is a litmus test. Like we
really.
uh, it uh, helps us to see people who they are from the inside. So, so
You
I
have to
think this
wear your
is
colors, yeah, for sure.
yeah. So I
Mm.
think this is something good for us, because we know for a person who what they feel about us, and is that person really a sensitive person or a in sensitive person. So um, all those things we see very clearly.
No, absolutely. And I would never tell a client that stuttering is a gift to that person. And I would never tell myself that at the age of 16. I would just run out the room and say, really? Get out of my life. So I'm telling you this obviously because we're on the podcast and we're talking about it. And I'm reflecting back to that letter that I wrote, that someone wrote about his stuttering. And I mean, if I look back in the role that stuttering has played in my life, stuttering has totally molded who I am. stuttering has given me opportunities that I would have never dreamed of as a child. Remember, at the age of 16, I wanted to become a secretary to answer my dad's phone. At my age now, I have been lucky enough to travel the world because of stuttering. You know, I finished my degree with speech therapy. I then did my master's, and I did my master's on speakeasy on self-help groups because at the age, so I went to a speech therapist at the age of 16, and she introduced me to a self-help group, and it was amazing for me to see men and women who stuttered and they actually had a job, they had a family, they got married, they lived, and they had a stutter, which was amazing, you know. And I remember being there as a 16-year-old at Wits, where I studied. And then, so I studied speech therapy, and then Speakeasy, the self-help group, stopped to run because there weren't enough members. And I did my master's on the self-help group, on the benefits of a self-help group, because Speakeasy South Africa had ceased to run. And I sent out a survey to the members, and I asked them about the benefits of self-help group, etc. And one of the recommendations was they wanted to reestablish Speakeasy. So that's what I did. I took it upon myself to reestablish Speakeasy. What was I, about 22, 23? And I got it up and going again. And that's how I also entered the world of the ISA and the international world, because Speakeasy was part of the ISA, and South Africa actually held the ISA conference in 1998. And I, how old was I? 18-year-old, I spoke at the ISA. I hadn't been, yes, can you imagine? I
Wow.
was just about to go into speech therapy, to study speech therapy. I was studying in Israel at the time. And so, yeah, I mean, I've been with the ISA, haven't been on the board, but I've been involved in the ISA since 18. So, yeah, it's been a journey, and it's really, stuttering has really molded who I am. I don't think, I mean, one never knows, but if I didn't stutter, I don't think I would be a speech therapist. If I wasn't a speech therapist, I wouldn't travel. I wouldn't meet all the wonderful people internationally. And I've met so many fantastic speakers, fantastic people who stutter, specialists in the field. And when I give therapy to people in South Africa, you know, we isolated here in a way that we don't know that there's a world of stuttering out there. You know, and I say, guess what? There's an international world of stuttering. And I can connect you with people in America and Australia and Israel and Ghana and wherever, and it's amazing, you know, to know that. And then, of course, there's Africa, which I've been working with a lot, because Africa, obviously being South Africa has more resources than Africa. And we've been trying to get together an African conference, and it was about to happen, and then COVID hit. So that put us a halt to it. But that's on the cards, and obviously on the ISA as well. We're looking at an African conference, or getting Africa involved, more involved.
So, what do you think? Like, did stuttering made you a better speech therapist, or is this just
Hindrance.
a myth? Yeah, I also asked this question to Rod too. Like, some people say, okay, we need a therapist who also stutter, so that will be great. So, do you think that, like, a professional, a therapist need to be a stutterer, to be a good speech therapist?
I don't think it's a requirement. I know it's not a requirement, actually. I think that, I mean, I always joke with my clients that I can choose which side of table to sit, right? I can be the speech therapist, or I can be the person who stutters. I think a person who stutters, who is a speech therapist, has an edge in terms of, has something more than a speech therapist who doesn't stutter. But then at the same time, you can argue that a person who stutters as a speech therapist may perhaps be more emotionally involved. So, I mean, there's either side of the coin, but I think a person, I mean, I've had a couple of clients who've come to me because I stutter. And even, I remember a 14-year-old from Cape Town, her mom phoned me and she said, my daughter, and she'd been to about 4 or 5 speech therapists before. And she said, my daughter will only go to a speech therapist who stutters, and that is you. So we had Zoom sessions. So, I mean, I don't think it's a requirement. I think once you go through it, you're able to identify more with it. But there's some great, fantastic speech therapists out there who don't stutter. And I think in America, there are lots of people who stutter who are speech therapists, and they're mostly men because of the ratio. In South Africa, there are hardly any speech therapists. The majority of speech therapists here are female, and I'm not looking at the stats here, but I'm just thinking of the people I know. And I know one other speech therapist who's a female who stutters, okay, and then no men who stutter who's a speech therapist. So I think it also is culturally dependent as well.
Yeah. How was your experience being on the radio show? Because there is, no visuals, just your voice. So at that time, you were, more anxious that you have to speak more fluently. Share your experience. How was that?
Well, I mean, over the years, I've kind of, I wouldn't say been forced into radio, TV. I have, because I feel like, people have reached out to me in South Africa because I've been the voice of Speakeasy, the self-help group, the person who stutters. And, even so they'd phone me and say, Dina, especially for International Stuttering Awareness Day, the 22nd of October, will you be on the radio? And obviously being quite nervous, part of me would want to say no, but I wouldn't say no, because if I don't do it, who's going to do it, right? So as you do something, as you experience it more, I think one becomes less nervous. But initially, I mean, I used to be very nervous. You could hear in my voice, when the lilts happen, you can hear in my voice that I was nervous. But over the years, I mean, I do still get nervous, but one grows more accustomed to speaking.
Yeah, like I have never been on the radio, but I like if I sorry, if I imagine that, like I thought that I will more uh, anxious, like there is no visual, so just voice, so I have to speak more fluent, more good, because just my voice is going, and if there I'm stuck, people will think, hey,
It's like being over the phone, though. It's like being over a Zoom call without video. It's very similar.
yeah, I
It's like,
can.
it's like being phone. It's like being on Zoom. So obviously, for a person who stutters, preparation is really important. So knowing the question, preparing, trying not to be kept off guard, which is hard in a radio when you're on the spot, or a podcast like this, where you kind of having a conversation, which you can prepare, but you can't prepare. But with time, with experience, one experiences, one learns. And then what's really important to know, and what I tell clients who stutter as well, is it's about the content, not about the manner. Right. So what's more important, or what do people listen to? Yes, obviously, if there's very severe stuttering, they'll notice it. But ultimately, people are talking to you. Why? Because they want to hear what you want to say. You are an
Yeah.
expert in the field, or you know what you're talking about. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking to you, or they wouldn't ask you to be on the show, or the radio, or in an interview, or at a presentation.
Yeah. So mm, you are now on the board of ISA uh, for last 4 years. So
Hmm.
what you see the future of ISA and its impact on the stuttering community globally?
Well, I think we recently had a virtual, and I say virtual meeting with the members about a couple of weeks ago. And I think that the whole world is changing and has changed, especially in the face of COVID, in the face of Zoom, in the face of, there's so many more international like groups, stuttering groups, which are able to reach worldwide, which we couldn't before. I mean, 20 years ago, there was only the ISA. It was only the one International Stuttering Association that had a conference once every 3 years. Now it's fantastic that there've been, you know, that there are new groups that have come up. There's Stammer, there's Tom Shastin as well, Stamley, and so many more others. So I think we need to, I say, needs to find. Obviously, the role is changing, okay, and has changed, but it's been the longest standing since the beginning, and we're trying to find our exact fit into the new world. But I think it's all important that we work eclectically, we work together, we collaborate, and just see, open, talk to everyone, see what the need is, where the need is, and then take it forward from there.
Yeah, like working together, we can make anything possible. And now we are moving uh, towards the end. Sorry, I don't know
Okay.
uh, wha- what's going into my throat. Yeah. So
If you were in South Africa, I'd offer you a glass of water, right? Take a while to get there.
thank you. So now we are moving towards the end. So what is your message for people who stutter?
My message is that there's always hope. No matter what age, there's always hope, and you're not alone. And anywhere in the world, you're not alone. And these days, it's so easy to reach out. Well, I know it's hard emotionally to reach out, but it's so easy to reach out to someone, or to type, or to WhatsApp, or to email. And I think for people to know that there are people out there who have experience and do experience what you're going through, and just to reach out and to talk, even if it's not about techniques, even if it's about sharing feelings and thoughts about what's going on, because the stuttering world and the international stuttering community is amazing, and some people just don't know it's there, and it'll just need to be pushed to reach out. And once you reach out, it's amazing.
Yeah, this is the the uh, power of being together, being in the support group, and because then we know we are not alone. He or she is also like me. So like
Of course.
this, yeah, this means that like this is okay to stutter or stammer. This is fine. So, yeah, so yeah, of course this give us a new hope.
Mhm. And it's I mean, when I say hope, it's hope that stuttering isn't, it's hope that there are other people out there, that there are not answers, but that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that stuttering does not have to define you, stuttering should not define you, stuttering is a small part of you, but is not all of you at all.
Yeah, this is the main thing. Like when we see the whole picture, we come to know the part we are thinking is the whole is not the
Absolutely.
whole. It is just a small part.
Yeah,
So
and sometimes it's really hard for a person who stutters to see that, him or herself, and sometimes they need someone to help them, whether it be a speech therapist or another person who stutters, or a self-help group, or Stammerfest, or NSA, or IFI, whatever it is. Sometimes if you're in a hole, it's hard to get out yourself, but if you allow someone to help you, it's amazing. The power can be amazing.
yeah, like magnifying, stuttering, like when we move ahead and we think, uh, we just regret that by magnifying stuttering. We have missed a lot in life.
But again, it's not about missing out. It's what we had to go through, and once we can look back and say, "This is what I did," and when someone else is going through that, saying, "Hey, I know where you're at. I did that, and this is where I'm at, and I'm going to help you get there." Share them. So it's also about not regretting, not what happened, what experience you've been through, but again, reframing it, where and not lying to yourself and saying it was fantastic. No, it was a difficult time, but I had to go through that in order to get where I am now. And I am where I am now because I went through that, whatever it is, whatever difficulties. And I know it's not easy, but it's always a work in process. And life, unfortunately, is ups and downs, right? So the wheel always turns.
Yeah, like it's a bad experience or good. In the end, is it's uh, experience, and it matters a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it makes us who we are. And we can use that experience and we can dwell on it and we can feel bad about it and we can stay in the corner and lock ourselves in the room. Or we can decide, hey, it was that and I'm going to find help. Or that was yesterday and today I'm going to get up in the morning and I'm going to say hello to the world and start my day afresh and find someone to talk to, or look at the world in a different way with the help of yourself or others.
Thank you, Dina, being on the podcast. Your uh, experience and thoughts are insightful. I have learned a lot, and those people who will see this podcast will also learn a lot, and I'm hopeful that this podcast will change their lives. So thank you so much for uh, taking out time and being here today.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation. And if anyone wants to reach out to me with pleasure, or any of our board members or the ISA, and just remember you aren't alone. And Ahmed, thank you for an awesome job and for hosting and for asking all the right questions. And well done to you too. Thank you.
Thank you. uh, Dear viewers, um I hope you liked this podcast and enjoy it. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe the channel. And we will see you soon next time. Take care. Bye.